Welcome in, everybody. It's Uncle Jimmy from Uncle Jimmy's podcast. Today we got a new segment, Mental Health Mondays. Why Mental Health Mondays? Because mental health affects every one of us, every day, every week, regardless of the calendar. When somebody says I'm okay, they may truly not be. In early September, my own world was shattered by profound pain. In that moment of crisis, I made a conscious choice. I looked myself in the mirror and affirmed to myself, I am enough, and I will get through this. What has unfolded in the months since has been truly transformative. I have discovered my voice, reclaimed my inner light, and found renewed passion. Today, I am committed to openly sharing my journey with mental health, striving each day to be the best version of myself. I have removed the mask I once wore, stopped people-pleasing, established healthy boundaries, and begun prioritizing my own well-being above all else. Too often, society tells us to just get over it or assures us that you'll be fine. The truth is, it's okay not to be okay. If you are feeling down, overwhelmed, or at your lowest, please reach out. Speak to someone you trust, a friend, family member, partner, or a trusted professional. Do not bottle it up or push it down. That approach only deepens the struggle and can make things far worse. If you feel like you have no one to turn to, know that help is always available. In the United States, the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is there, 24/7, 365. Simply dial a text, and a trained counselor will respond immediately. No judgment, just support. You are not alone. You are loved. You are needed, and you belong here on this earth. Your life matters. Let's keep this conversation going together. Mental Health Mondays is going to be something unique, but mental health is health, and taking care of it is a sign of true strength. Do you know that nearly 1 in 5 men live with a mental health condition? In the U.S., men are less likely to be diagnosed with common conditions compared to women. Among U.S. adults, depression affects men at lower reported rates than women, but only about 1 in 4 men with depression received counseling or therapy in the previous year. In 2023 to 2025, the trends: nearly 1 in 10 men experience depression or anxiety, but less than half receive treatment. Men face a disproportionately high risk of suicide, critical indicator of untreated mental health issues. Account for about 80% of suicides in the U.S., despite making up about 50% of the population. Men die by suicide 3.8 to 4 times more often than women. The highest rates are among older men, who are 75 plus, at about 40%, 40.7 per 100,000. In recent data, suicide remains the leading cause of death for men under 50 in some regions, and rates have shown increases in certain demographics like young men. Treatment and help seeking. Men are significantly less likely to seek or receive mental health treatment than women. Among those with serious mental illnesses, treatment rates are lower for men. Barriers include stigma, societal expectations of masculinity, tough it out, also the cost, and lack of male-specific outreach. Other key insights include young men showing rising trends in loneliness, nihilism from online spaces, and externalized symptoms, anger, substance use, risk-taking, rather than classic internalized depression signs. Globally, men are affected by conditions like substance use disorders at higher rates, and mental health disorders impact 1 in 8 men worldwide, but that often goes undiagnosed. If you're struggling again, and you know people, and you don't have anybody you can talk to, you can always call 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Please, we're going to go into now episode 1, the weight you can't see, what mental health really is, and why it matters more than ever. This is Uncle Jimmy's podcast, and today we're not talking politics. We're not talking headlines. We're talking about something closer than all of that. Closer than your job, closer than your phone, closer than your own name. We're talking about your mind, your mood, your peace, the thoughts that don't let you sleep, the worry you smiled through, the sadness you keep saying is just being tired. Today's episode is called The Weight You Can't See, because a lot of us are carrying something heavy, and from the outside, nobody would know. You know how we talk, man, I'm just going crazy. She's just emotional. He needs to man up. That's how we were raised. Don't cry. Don't talk about it. Don't show weakness. So we learn to walk around with a smile over a storm. We crack jokes instead of telling the truth. We get louder in public because we're quieter inside. But mental health is not about being crazy or weak. Mental health is how you handle stress. You deal with pressure. You talk to yourself when nobody else is around. You bounce back after life knocks you down. Every one of us has mental health the same way every one of us has physical health. If you don't take care of it, it doesn't just fix itself. A lot of people listening right now are struggling, but the struggle doesn't look like the movies. It looks like You're always tired, no matter how much you sleep. You snap at people you love over little things. You can't focus on anything for long. You feel numb, but life is happening in front of you, not to you. You keep saying I'm fine because you don't have words for how you really feel. Sometimes depression isn't crying on the floor. Sometimes depression is washing the dishes, going to work, cracking jokes, and feeling nothing inside. Sometimes anxiety isn't screaming. Sometimes it's constant what ifs in the back of your mind. A tight chest, racing thoughts at 3 a.m., and a fear that something is wrong, but you don't know what. The weight is real, even if you're still showing up, still functioning, still making people laugh. Now let's talk about where this weight comes from. It comes from stress, bills, kids, jobs, no jobs, health, aging parents. It can also come from trauma, things you saw, things that were done to you, losses you never fully grieved. It can come from pressure, the pressure to be strong, the pressure to provide, the pressure to never show weakness. It can also come from loneliness, being surrounded by people and still feeling invisible. A lot of us grew up in homes where nobody talked about feelings, where therapy was a joke, and pray about it was the only mental health plan. Prayer is powerful. Faith is also powerful. But so is honesty. So is asking for help. So is saying something is wrong and I can't fix it alone. The weight you're carrying might be years of swallowed pain. Every I'm fine you said when you weren't. Every time you took care of everyone else and ignored yourself. Sometimes we separate the mind and the body like they're two different people, but your brain is part of your body. When you're under constant stress, your heart rate stays up, your muscles stay tight, your sleep gets lighter. Your body pumps out stress hormones like cortisol. Over time, that can lead to headaches, stomach problems, high blood pressure, weakened immune system. So when you say, it's just in my head, understand your head is connected to everything else. Taking care of your mental health is also taking care of your physical health. And sometimes one of the bravest things you can do is to finally call the doctor, call the therapist, call the friend and say, I need to talk about what's going on inside me. Now let's expose some lies that keep people from getting help. Lie number 1, other people have it worse, so I shouldn't complain. Pain is not a contest. You don't have to earn the right to feel hurt. Lie number 2, if I just work harder, it'll go away. You can't outwork trauma. You can't overtime your way out of grief. Lie number 3, I'll deal with it later. Later becomes years. Years become habits and habits become your personality. Lie number 4, if I ask people for help, people will think I'm weak. The truth, most strong people you admire have cried in somebody's car, have sat in the therapist's office, have called a friend and said, I'm not okay. Strength is not how much you can carry alone. Strength is knowing when it's time to let somebody help you lift. Here's a starting exercise you can talk through. I want you to say, family, if you're listening right now and something in you feels heavy, I want you to take a breath. Inhale, exhale, and quietly in your heart or out loud, if you're alone, try to name what your storm is. Is it anxiety, depression, grief, burnout, loneliness, anger that never really goes away? You don't have to fix it today, but you can name it. Because anything you're willing to name, you're one step closer to healing. What stays vague stays powerful. What you name, you can face. People think mental health is fixed by one big dramatic breakthrough. Sometimes the healing is in small, consistent moves. Going to bed 30 minutes earlier, drinking water instead of that third soda, taking a 10-minute walk with your phone on silent, writing 3 sentences in a journal before bed. What did I feel today? Where did I feel it in my body? What do I need tomorrow? Texting one friend and saying, can we talk sometime? I've been going through it. None of that looks impressive on social media. No one claps for you when you choose to rest instead of doom scroll. But those little choices are how you slowly stop putting the weight down. There are moments when pushing through isn't brave anymore. It's dangerous. If you feel hopeless most days, can't get out of bed for long stretches, use alcohol, pills, or anything else just to feel normal, or if you have thoughts of hurting yourself or wishing you weren't here, this is not just a phase. This is your mind crying out for help. And that's when you must reach out. Call your doctor. Look up a therapist or counselor in your area. Use a crisis line if you're in immediate danger. Tell someone you trust, I'm not safe in my own head right now. That's not trauma. That's survival. You are not a burden. You are not broken beyond repair. You are a human being whose pain deserves attention. In a lot of our communities, especially Black and brown communities, mental health has been ignored, laughed at, or spiritualized away. We hear that Black people don't get depressed. Just pray harder. We don't tell strangers our business. The problem is that silence becomes generational. Grandma carried it, Dad carried it, now you're carrying it. This is where you, listening right now, have a chance to break that cycle. You can be the first family First person in your family to say therapy without whispering. Check in on your friends for real, not just the surface. Teach your kids that feelings are not dangerous, they're information. The culture needs new traditions. Sunday dinner and honest conversations. Prayer and counseling. Toughness and tenderness. Let's end this first episode with the simple truth. You deserve a life that doesn't feel like constant survival. Not perfect, not Instagram highlight reel. Just a life where you can breathe. You can laugh without feeling guilty. You can rest without feeling lazy. You can feel sad without feeling ashamed. Mental health is not a luxury for rich people. It's not a trend. It's part of being alive. If nobody ever told you this, let Uncle Jimmy tell you today. You are worth the effort it will take to feel better. You are worth the phone call. You are worth the appointment. You are worth the time. You are worth the healing. Family, this was episode 1, The Weight You Can't See. Today we named the storm. We talked about what mental health really is, how it shows up, and why it matters. On episode 2, we're going to talk about your body and your brain, how sleep, food, movement, and even how you can breathe. You can either calm your mind or crank up your anxiety. Until then, do one thing for yourself this week. One small act of care, one honest conversation, one step toward putting the weight down. This is Uncle Jimmy's podcast. I love you. Take care of your mind because you only get one. And up next in our second segment, we're going to have Maddie Andrews, our first guest on Mental Health Mondays. Stay tuned, because Maddie and I are up next. Every one of us carries a story we don't always talk about. The quiet battles, the heavy days, the moments that cracked us open, and the moments that stitched us back together. We've all stumbled. We've all broken. We've all stood at the edge of something we weren't sure we could come back from. And somehow, through strength we didn't know we had, we rose anyway. Because inside every person, there is a spark that refuses to die, a hope that refuses to stay silent, a heart that refuses to give up no matter how dark the night gets. And that's why we're here, to listen, to learn, to witness the courage it takes just to be human. Every soul you hear on the show has walked through something that shaped them, sharpened them, and carried them forward. Everyone has a story, everyone has a battle, everyone has a journey, and this is where you come to hear it. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome into Uncle Jimmy's podcast. Friends, today we're diving into a story that's raw, real, and overflowing with hope. A true testament to the incredible strength of the human spirit. Join me in giving a huge, heartfelt welcome to Maddie Andrews, a shining mental health advocate, MSW student, certified peer support specialist, and the passionate founder of J&E Support Group. Maddie just doesn't talk about healing, she lives it. After enduring profound childhood trauma and receiving a serious mental illness diagnosis that made every day a battle for survival, Maddie faced an unimaginable and life-threatening crisis in 2023 that required her to relearn even the most basic functions. But from the darkest moments, she rose with unbreakable resilience, turning her pain into purpose. Through her nonprofit, she creates safe, free spaces for others, offering support groups, mindful activities, advocacy, and a community where no one feels alone. Maddie's journey reminds us that healing is possible, that vulnerability is power, and that one person's courage can light the way for countless others. Maddie, we're so grateful you've chosen to share your light with us today. Thank you, and welcome on the show.
Thank you so very much for having me. I'm super excited.
Super excited myself.
Okay, so my name is Maddie. I am a master's of social work student. I do work full-time as a peer support specialist. I did found a nonprofit. I'm a former educator. I'm from originally a small town in North Carolina called Pittsboro, which is not so small anymore, but I now live in an even smaller town called Liberty, North Carolina. And I am a fierce mental health advocate.
And I thank you for that. I'm one myself that struggles from anxiety, depression, so I appreciate everything that you do. And I know nowadays it can be so tough. You know, my therapist retired and I was waiting probably 4 months for a new one. You know, every call I made, every email I sent out, we're not accepting new patients or we're not accepting your health care. It can be so frustrating at times, especially if you're in the middle of a crisis, you know?
There's definitely a shortage of providers, and that was one of the initial ideas behind me going to graduate school because a lot of social workers are therapists. I wanted to provide therapy for free through grant funding through the nonprofit, but what I learned is that the system is broken on a much larger level. So I'm definitely going to get into like advocacy and program development and things like that, and be a bigger voice of change so that when it trickles down to the therapist, the system is a little bit better.
Yeah. No, and like I said, I do. I appreciate it because there's not enough people out there. I tell people all the time, one of the biggest things you can use if you can't get a therapist or you need to talk to somebody is 988. That's a
Yes.
huge, you can text, you can call it whenever, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Someone's always there, whether to text you back or to pick up the phone. If you feel like you have nobody and you're in a crisis or you're going through it and you just need someone to talk to and nobody's around, you can always call or text that.
Thank you for saying that. That is an excellent resource, and they actually have, like, extensions when you call for certain groups of people, so I know there's a veterans resource on there as well.
Yeah, that's one of the lifelines, that I always talk about people, that they can use is 988 when they feel alone, if they don't have anybody. And even if they don't feel comfortable speaking, they may be going through something and they don't feel comfortable speaking to a friend, a family member, a loved one, you can always reach out. 988's always, always, always staffed, always someone there. I've used it myself many times.
Yeah.
It's a lifeline that's definitely very good. So, Maddie, let's start at the beginning. What are some of your earliest memories of dealing with mental health challenges, and how did childhood trauma first show up in your life?
Definitely. So my earliest memories of mental health challenges was having panic attacks at night in my bedroom. And this was because of my childhood trauma. So I was actually sexually assaulted when I was 4. And I developed PTSD because when I told somebody, they shut me down. They told me it was my fault. They told me I was a bad kid. And if I told my parents, I'd be in a lot of trouble. And I still live with PTSD today. I have this deep rooted fear about being in trouble. It triggers my other symptoms. And that's really one of my earliest memories, period, was being shut down like that. And I have a lot of anxiety today because of it. So I always tell people, if a child comes to you with something big like that, listen, it is possible. A lot of times kids aren't making this up. It's
Yeah,
important to hear
especially
them.
kids. Kids, mostly they tell the truth 99%,
Yeah.
you know. And how old were you when you went to talk to somebody about it? When you reached out to that person, they shut you down?
I told my teacher when I was 4 because it happened at school, and she shut me down, and I didn't talk about it again until I was 35 years old. I really just crammed it into a box
Yeah.
and didn't think about it because it was just that traumatic for me.
Yeah, you probably, stuffed it down and stuffed it down for, you said 35, so 31 years, you were probably just every day you woke up,
Yeah,
pushing it down. And that's one of the hottest things, myself dealing with my depression and anxiety stems from also years of just pushing it down, pushing it down, pushing it down. Yeah. Mine was the loss of my dad almost 16 years ago. I was 26, he was 52. And, I just went back to work and just shoved it down. Everybody asked me, "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay." Just kept going and kept
yeah.
going, kept pushing it down. So at 35, you said you finally talked to somebody about it. Now, did you reach out to a therapist or family member?
Actually, the way it came out was I also live with serious mental illness. I live with what's called schizoaffective bipolar type, which means I have symptoms of both schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. And I was actually very sick at 35. I was quite manic and psychotic. And when you're manic, your little part of your brain that's your impulse control that tells you this is not a good idea or don't say that or this isn't appropriate is not quite there. So I was just kind of like projectile vomiting everything that came into my mind. And I was sitting around with my husband one day and I just blurted it out. And he was like, "Whoa, what are you talking about?" And it kind of forced me, okay, I had a therapist at the time. Maybe I need to talk about this in therapy. Maybe there is some it sent me on a journey to kind of like once I healed from being sick, like working on myself and trying to figure out how to let go of some of this trauma.
Yeah, the biggest thing I think you said there is working on yourself. I think as humans, we tend to almost, for me, when I was pushing everything down, I could take care of everybody else in my life, friends.
Yeah.
I couldn't take care of myself, until I realized one day I'm sitting there and I'm saying, what the hell? I can take care of everybody else, but I can't take care of myself. My apartment was a mess. My bedroom, clothes everywhere. It looked like, a friggin' thrift store, for Christ's sakes. But everywhere else I went, I put on the brave face and I put on that face of everything's great. Everything's good over here, when it really wasn't.
I call it wearing a mask in public. I do it too. When we know how society wants us to portray ourselves and we do a good job of playing the role, but when we're in our private time, that mask comes off and all of the emotional issues or mental health concerns kind of come out. Like, there was points in my life when I didn't even want to shower or brush my teeth. I was so
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah. I used to consider it some days in just a victory to get out of bed and shower and go to work, and I would go to work
Yeah.
every day. Some days I'd stay in bed for 4 or 5 days and just sleep, but other times I'd just get up, dirty, just roll out of bed, go to work. And it was one of those where it was like, once I started really taking care of myself, and the hardest part for me was, and I don't know about you, sitting in silence, sitting with yourself,
Yes. I
where
still struggle with that.
me too, and it's tough, but I say that's when the hardest work is done. I had a guy, Bill Poulter, on who we talked about it, and he said that's when the hardest work's done, when you're by yourself in silence.
I think that's something I've been working on with my therapist and my psychiatrist is how to sit in silence. Like, I work 90 to 100 hours a week, and everybody's like, "You do too much, you do too much, you do too much." And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, it's a coping skill, probably not the most healthy coping skill, but
Yeah,
it's the quiet moments when my symptoms start to rear their ugly heads, and it's going to be a lifelong battle for me to learn to just be. Sometimes we just need to be."
yeah, yep. And I see like the similarities with you. You just said 90 to 100 hours a week. I can go back, same thing. I was working 88 hours to 100 hours a week, and sometimes more, just so I could just, be around somebody or be at work where I didn't have to worry about things, or just sit at home and just, because those silent moments and that time being alone would only sometimes make things worse for me,
Yeah.
you know? So I know you spent years trying to survive each day after your diagnosis. What did these tougher seasons look like for you emotionally and practically?
I always worked. So practically, I was wearing that mask and I was pretty good at my job. I was an educator. But personally, my life was just in shambles. In my early teens and 20s, I lived in a state of mania and psychosis. And in my mid to end 20s and my early 30s, I lived in a deep state of depression and psychosis. I had a lot of paranoia, hallucinations. And when I'm in a deep state of depression, I'm super suicidal. Like, I think it was 2021. I came home and told my husband that I didn't want to be here anymore. And it was this all consuming thought I had that I couldn't let go of. And we tried journaling, but all I could journal about was the ways I wanted to die. He got me a weighted blanket, and it was just this year-long process of just grasping at straws. And I started to withdraw from society completely, stop being so good at my job because of the psychosis and the depression. And my life really just fell apart. And then in 2022, I decided I needed to quit my job because it was going to be my life or the job. And I woke up at 3 in the morning the next day and said, "What did I do?" That was my only coping skill. And I did make the plan and I did write the note. Luckily, I didn't follow through. I called 988, which is a great
Yeah.
resource.
It's one of the best. It's one of the best. I say it all the time. And that's something tough, and I appreciate you, being honest and talking about that, because I think a lot of times it's good for people, that are going to listen to the show, that are going to hear your perspective of what you went through and how you're still here today, telling your journey, your
Yeah.
story of life, because, suicide is one of those things that, people don't realize sometimes how dark, it can be for people that struggle with mental health issues. They can be some of the happiest people in public, happiest people in their work life, but when they go home, they shut it down and it's just forget about it.
That
So
is so true. And people
yeah,
had no idea with me. People had absolute because I'm like this. I'm happy. I'm
yeah,
joyful. I'm participating. But when in my head is a very scary place.
yeah. And you're at, you said you work, you were at work, an educator, so you're there, teaching, and it's one of those where it's almost keeping you going, but it's also hurting
Yeah.
as well, because you're going through, like you said, some days. For me, a victory was just getting up and taking a shower.
Yep.
Yeah. The small little battles that people don't realize. And that's one of the biggest things I tell people is you never know what anybody is going through. Everybody's going through something. So hold the door for somebody tomorrow, maybe
Yes.
the person behind you, if you have a couple extra bucks, buy them a cup of coffee, be kind, say, "Hey, good morning. How you doing today?" Because that
I
could change
love
someone's
that.
whole, day. That could change someone's whole week, or, it could change their whole mindset.
I always say the same thing, kindness is free. We don't know what anybody's going through. And there had been periods of my life where I was at an all-time low and someone smiled at me or gave me a kind word or gave me a random act of kindness. And what they didn't realize is that I was choosing life or death in that moment and they enabled me to choose life. They gave me purpose for one more minute. So
Yeah.
just be kind.
Yeah, they kept you going. They kept that light, that light going instead of extinguishing it, and that's one of the biggest things I think that people fail to realize, that in a world of 8 billion people, everybody is going through something, whether it's financial, mentally, physically, whether they're sick, everybody's going through something. And like you said, being kind, it's free. It doesn't cost a thing, and we live in a world now where everybody, you get on the social media or everybody's either negative or positive. And I like to tell people, I've gotten phone calls before where people have been like, "You okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why? What's up?" "Oh, you post." "Yeah, I'm okay today, but I'm just having a shit day." I don't use my social media to portray myself as my life's perfect, because it's friggin' far from it. Everybody, is different, but I look at social media for me as, hey, this is my life. This is what I'm going through. This is what it's like. Take it or leave it. If you
Yes.
want to hit the unfollow, hit the unfollow. It's not going to be the end of my day. So take us to 2023. What happened during that life-threatening crisis, and how did it change everything for you?
Yeah. So in 2023, I was on like, I don't know, roughly 10 mental health medications, all really high doses and super depressed, not living life at all. And then they called in April. They're like, well, there's this new drug. And I'm like, oh my God, here we go again. Okay, I'll try it. Except the difference here is I started processing emotions. I started feeling motivated. I was losing weight and I started to live my life again. It was getting me out of the depression. So they decided to reduce some of the other medications. But like I said earlier, I live with schizoaffective bipolar type. So for me, you have to treat mania, depression, and psychosis. But they reduced my mania medication. And so I got very, very sick. I got very, very manic. And then I ended up in a very severe psychotic state to the point that I had to be written out of work. And my husband had to be my 24/7 caretaker. I could no longer care for myself. I couldn't drive. They sedated me at first, and that didn't work. So then they upped a medication called lithium. Lithium is a heavy metal used to treat bipolar disorder. I was on it for like 15 years. Great drug if it's used effectively. But part of treatment is you have to obtain blood work. Well, they didn't. And pretty quickly there, I lost the ability to walk, talk, swallow, use a cell phone, read, write, use a toilet. I was a vegetable. And it was because I was dying from lithium toxicity. And by the time I got to the hospital, they said not only do you have lithium toxicity, but possibly serotonin syndrome, and you have AME, a brain injury. My blood levels were so through the roof that it gave me a brain injury. And I spent 2 weeks in the ICU restrained. I was very combative. And then I was transferred to the mental hospital. And in the ICU, they were talking like never recovering, violent syndrome, being a vegetable for the rest of my life, if not dying. And then I started to wake up a little bit. And when I went to the mental hospital, and we're talking years recovery. I mean, I couldn't even write my name, but I rehabbed myself. And when I came home, I have amnesia. I didn't know what had happened to me. And I spent the first couple weeks just laying in bed. I was very sick. My heart was damaged from this. My lungs had collapsed. And when you spend 3 weeks in bed, you're very weak. PT was having to teach me basic skills like sitting up. So
Yeah.
I was very weak. And after about 2 weeks of just wallowing about, I learned to read again and I read my medical records. And when I learned what happened to me, I was like, okay, wait a minute. I spent all these years of my life wanting to die. And here I am almost dying.
Yeah.
Like this fire burned in my belly. I was like, this is the moment that I'm going to forever change not only my life, but other people's lives too.
And that was the turning point right there.
It was the turning point. I had to relearn all basic skills and people weren't helping me do it. So I rehabbed myself and it was like this miraculous recovery. They were talking years and I was back at work full time 3 months later. It was phenomenal, but it's because I put recovery as my full-time job. I
Yeah.
was begging for resources. When I learned a skill, I took it home with me. It was a 24/7 job for me.
So relearning basic functions sounds incredibly challenging. What was the hardest part of the recovery process, and what gave you hope during those days?
I I think learning to talk again was very difficult because I didn't have like audio of myself to hear how I used to sound. When I was in the mental hospital, they gave me pen and paper and I taught myself how to write my name. And I couldn't read and input very well because of the brain injury, but they had written down phone numbers for me and I practiced reading and inputting. And the PT was working with me to walk, but I was like begging for help with this speech thing and nobody would help me. And I think another hard part of it was I had no short-term memory. I couldn't recall anything. And it was very frustrating because I wanted to be able to remember things. I wanted to be able to talk. I wanted to be able to drive. But it just took a few months of me practicing every day to get there.
And who was your biggest support throughout all this? Was it your husband?
It was definitely my husband. We were in a really low point of our marriage at this time. When I'm manic, I'm pretty in your face, we'll say. So I didn't make it easy on him, and he didn't understand what was happening, and he had absolutely no support. So it was very traumatic for him. So we were like this, cats and dogs, the entire time I was sick. And when I came home, I was so messed up from the brain injury and just the chemicals in my brain that I didn't have the capacity to feel love. It was an emotion that I couldn't register. So we
Yeah.
were actually talking about getting divorced when I came home, but we didn't. And we worked together. And today he is still my biggest support system. He is my eyes and ears. I'm a very independent person, but sometimes my support network can see things I can't. And I rely on him. But I also have to remember to be there for him too, because this isn't always easy on him either.
Yeah. No, big shout out to your husband, for being there and sticking through it all. That's what true love is, unconditional
Yes,
love, and that's awesome because sometimes, just imagine going through that whole experience with nobody. And there are some
I
people
can't
that don't have
imagine.
anybody.
I can't imagine. I probably would not be in 2022 when I wrote the note. He was the reason I didn't. He is my reason for living. He was changing my diapers in 2023. I would not be here today if it wasn't for my husband.
No, that's awesome to have him such support. So how did your lived experiences lead you to become a peer support specialist and pursue your master's in social work?
Well, upon the recovery journey, I had like these basic questions that I was asking myself. Why is mental health care so expensive for
Yeah.
something I didn't choose? Why is mental health care not accessible? Why am I driving an hour for services? Why have I been coached to be silent about who I am my entire life? And why have I never met a soul on this planet like me? And I was like, if nobody can answer these questions for me, I'm going to answer them for myself. I'm going to fix the problem. So, 4 months after coming home from the hospital, I started my nonprofit and I had to become a peer support specialist along the way to make it drive. And I believe in recovery. I believe in hope. I believe in talking about these things so much that I make it a career. There's something to be said for somebody who can say, I get it. Somebody who's been there too. Because when I had a peer support, I was so much more open to what they had to say, so much more receptive because they had actually been there. And that's the beauty of peer support. And then with my master's in social work, I wanted to create more change. And like I said earlier, I wanted to be a therapist, but that has since changed. And I love graduate school. I love social work. I love advocacy. I just love all of it. And I don't look at any of it as a job. It's a passion and it's a purpose.
And sometimes they'll tell you, you call, hey, we don't take your health insurance, but it's
Yeah.
$200 a session or 250, and if you're, maybe you do have it, maybe you don't, but sometimes you have to pay out of pocket. When I first started going through this, I paid for a private one, which was very expensive, but I loved the guy. I felt like I did the best work with him in the first couple of years, 2 years that I was with him, but it was very expensive to the point where I just couldn't afford it anymore, and it's tough because like you said, we don't ask for it. We didn't ask to have the mental health issues. And so founding J&E support group is such an inspiring step. What does J&E stand for?
My parents' names were Jane and Eddie Landreth, and they are my heroes because they taught me that I am not a diagnosis. I am Maddie, and that my diagnosis is not an excuse to not achieve. And not only that, I can achieve anything I want to because I'm not disabled. I'm a superhuman. My mom called me her hero, and so I dedicated the nonprofit to them.
That's awesome. That is, that's remarkable. Are your mom and dad still with us?
My dad died in 2012, and my mom died by suicide in 2019, so they are no longer here.
I'm sorry for that. But you're carrying on their legacy, with the support group.
Yeah.
So your organization offers 100% free support groups and activities. Why is making everything accessible and donation-based so important to you?
I feel like there's a lot of people in this world who don't access mental health care who want it because of the cost. And maybe they're new to the idea of mental health care, but they don't want to pay the money to figure it out. But the services would be really beneficial to them if they just tried. And so that's why I offer it for free. I'd rather pay out of pocket for this organization to run and people heal than people not come to my services because they're afraid to spend the money and not I don't want to get in the insurance game and all that kind of stuff. And I want to do it to build communities. That's the basis of all of it because isolation with mental health they're so tied together. So we do a lot of like mindful art, games, community outings. We do work too, but it's all about aiding and ending the isolation. I live in a very rural area with a high level of stigma and low level of providers. And that's why I wanted to bring it here because there's just not anything like it in my area.
I think the biggest thing you said is building a community, right? Because I often find, like you said, isolation, right? I often find myself when I can see myself starting to self-isolate where I'm like, I got to get out. I got to get out. That's one of my triggers where I know where, hey, you're starting that trend back into that hole. You're starting that trend to go back, when I do start to isolate. In that community, building that community of people is one of the biggest things. And 100% for the group, that's unbelievable. So suicide prevention and memorial initiatives are part of your work as well. Can you share why that's so close to your heart and how it helps the community heal?
Well, my mom did die by suicide, 19, and then I'm a survivor myself. And I feel like people have this habit when people come to them with their mental health of just saying, it's all in your head or brush it off or you'll be okay. But then when they die this way, they're like, why didn't you call me? And
Yeah.
it's like this game. It's like, why can't we be there for them in the present? Why do we have to wait till the end? So that's one reason I want to bring awareness to it. And our current suicide awareness, we're doing a fundraiser to raise money for a bigger event. We're making a memorial T-shirt with loved ones' names to put on the back. We're going to have a suicide awareness graphic on the front and a memorial on the back, and we're going to sell them so that we can raise money for a bigger initiative to raise awareness for Suicide Prevention Month.
And how does someone get a name on the shirt?
My email is on my website. And please email me. I would love to put your loved one's name to honor their memory on the shirt. I think it would be great. I'm going to put my mom's name on there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to send you a name. Where can I send a donation to?
Right now, our website has all of that information. Our website is jesupport.org. We have a wish list for Amazon because we do a lot of fun activities and these things are very expensive. And so you can just donate one of those. We're doing a 50-50 raffle right now. Winner gets half the cash. You can PayPal me. And then we always accept donations. We are a 501c3 organization, so all our donations are tax write-offs.
Yeah.
And then you could do it in a loved one's name, someone with a mental health journey, so you can help others heal in the process.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm definitely going to be getting some things off that wish list and sending them your way. Someone with lived experience, how does that shape the way you support others in your groups?
I believe I have a different level of empathy for people when I'm working with them because I've been there. Not saying I know their journey completely because we're all unique, right? I can't say I know exactly how they feel, but when we've been in similar situations, I'm able to say, oh, yeah, I remember that. Here's what worked for me, or have a different level of compassion for people, I think is a lot of it. And I wish the world in general had more compassion, empathy, and grace for individuals who are going through something.
Yeah, I find sometimes a lot of people sometimes will tell you, like you said, brush it off or get over it, like,
It's all in your head.
yeah, it's all in your head. Like we want to be sitting here, isolated and feeling down and out. Like, believe me, if it was that easy just to get over it, we would. We'd be fucking up, excuse my language, but we'd be up and going and we'd be okay, right? Like I look at
Right.
just like, I get so frustrated when I hear that, like, it's in your head or, one of the biggest things for me is one of my things that ticks me off more than anything is like, did you take your meds? And it's like,
Oh, I can't stand that. Do I need to
stand it.
call your doctor?
Yeah, it's
Or
like,
like
I'm
throwing your mental health in your face. Are you manic today? Are you psychotic?
Exactly.
What's wrong with you? I can't stand any of that. It is
I
so
hate it. That's my
degrading.
biggest thing is like, did you take your meds today? And it's like, "Oh, yes, I did." You know?
I think what people forget is that we're human beings too, and everybody has bad moments, days, and weeks. And ours just happen to look a little different. So don't blow up the mental health aspect. Just let him be a human being for once.
Exactly. Exactly. Because that's something that sets me off. And sometimes, when I do get those questions and my loved ones that do ask me that, I often tend to go back down the rabbit hole and isolate because it's like, like I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with them asking me these questions and that. Like, if I wasn't okay, I would let you know. And if I wasn't okay and I didn't let you know, I would probably be in the hospital. So one or the other, I'm not going to hurt myself. I don't want to hurt myself. Nothing like that. But if I'm not feeling well, and, sometimes people do tend to sometimes, I've done it before. I come off my meds. It's not the best thing in the world to do. I come off my meds saying, hey, I'm fixed. I'm cured, And like you said, when you were going through, your serious battle, they started lowering, the doses and it had an adverse, effect where you were coming down. And then you said they weren't checking your blood. So you had the lithium toxicity, you had the brain injury. And, I think that also has to do with a lack of resources as well with the hospitals and the doctors because they should be on top of those things.
They should. I mean, especially if they're visiting with you once a week and seeing you not
Exactly.
swallow or talk, But well, I'm not a doctor, I guess. I don't know.
Exactly. They'd be quick to point out to us, did you take your medicine? No. Did you take my blood today? You know what I mean? So, Maddie, what role has community played in your own healing journey? Both the support you've received and the ones that you've built.
I think the support I received, especially after my lithium, well, it starts with my parents, right? Like my parents supported me in unimaginable ways, and I put them through so much, especially when I was manic and self-harming in my 20s. And they never gave up on me as much as they wanted to. They never gave up on me. That my mom did tell me she wanted to sometimes, but that's neither here nor there. And then, I've always had friends around and then my husband. And after my toxicity, I found a day treatment program. It was a therapeutic farm and that became my family. That became my support system. And I leaned on them heavily and they got me to recovery. They nurtured me and supported me and taught me skills. And I'm forever grateful for them. And that's one reason I build communities today is because I was given such amazing resources. I wanted to give it back to the world. And now when I work in the inpatient unit or run my support groups or go to school, it's healing for me too. When I can help somebody or see that speck of light come to their eye, I'm like, okay, this reminds me, this gives me purpose, this keeps me healthy.
That's, like you said, the spark in the eye. You can
Yeah.
see it, and, I've been told sometimes it's like, you don't look too good. You don't look like you're with it today. And some days,
Yeah.
hey, you look, you totally, looks like you got the spark back in your eye. And it's like, yeah, you don't have to point out the obvious. I know what I'm going through,
I don't like that either.
So mental health stigma is still so real. What's one myth you've
It is.
encountered that you would love to bust wide open? One myth.
Oh, it's so hard to pick one. Oh my gosh. Probably that people with schizophrenia are inherently violent. Like people hear the word schizophrenia and they're like, "Oh, they're gonna murder me." And then I'm like, "I'm schizophrenic and I'm not gonna murder you." They're like, "No, you're not. No, you're not." Like, "Yes, I am." And one way that the nonprofit is trying to work on this is we're planning a mental health simulation. It's an advocacy effort to educate the public on what people with mental illness go through on a day to day. You're going to come and be given a profile with diagnosis, income, job, the whole 9 yards, family support, and there's tables set up around the room, and it's community agencies with situation cards there of things that someone with this diagnosis would really go through, and you have to navigate that. And we're going to follow that with a panel of lived experience speakers, and we're going to end with signups for free mental health first aid trainings for the community. And I'm hoping can break down a little bit of stigma and help people just be nicer, I
Yeah.
guess.
Now, when are you guys going to be doing that?
We're going to do it in October for World Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're going to do it on a Friday. I'm hopeful it catches on and more people want to do it. Like, I think one of the coolest parts of what we're doing is for the profiles with for a person living with schizophrenia, we're actually going to have the headsets. So I think the people that need to have the most impact, I'm going to give those profiles, be like, oh, by the way, today you're going to hallucinate a little bit while you have this challenge.
I would love to come down. I would love to come down in October and check it out. And
Really?
yeah, I would love to. I would love
Yeah.
to. Yeah. Yeah. Even if you need me to get up on the stage and
Yes.
talk for a bit, I would love to tell my story and tell
Yes.
people, I would love to. So definitely mark me
That's
down for October.
amazing.
October, definitely,
Yes.
you don't have to say Uncle Jimmy's coming. You can just tell him Jimmy Leary. That's my name. I'm coming. But, and I would love to come down and talk about my mental health and, how
Yes.
I navigated certain situations and gotten through it with the depression and the anxiety. So, yeah, I just put it down October, North Carolina. Here I come. So I can't wait. I'm excited.
That's
And that's why
awesome.
that's why I love the podcast, because I love to get people on, talk about their stories and people. And I can tell you right now, this is probably one of the best interviews I've done, where I think a lot of my guests now are going to hear a lot about me, because I don't talk really, during the podcast. I let people come on and tell their journey about their life, but I feel like what we're talking about and discussing, where we can relate to certain things and we've been through certain things, where this has been like one of the most thought-provoking episode we're going to have, per se, I think,
Wow.
because it's awesome, so I think mental health is one of the biggest things out there that people need to realize, that along with your physical health, your mental health also has to be taken care of as well,
And they go hand in hand. They
They
really
do.
do. Like, when I was recovering, I had to learn holistic care to go along with medication. I can't have that magic answer in a pill. And, exercise, it sounds silly, but it really, 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 you're improving your physical, but you're really improving your mental just as much.
Yeah. One of the things I've started doing recently is getting up. I used to literally, I have to be in work at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I would get up at 7:35. I live 10 minutes away. So I would rush out the door and go. But now I get up early, and I try to, and they're so much better days when I do. I get up early, I get my cup of coffee, and I sit by the ocean and watch the sunrise. It's one of the
Wow.
best. And that's been just the past month maybe that I've been doing that, where those days that I do get up early enough and I am there, those days are 100% better, just by getting up
Yeah.
early and seeing that sunrise and being like, hey, I'm alive, I'm breathing, I'm present, I'm here,
You're centering yourself for the
Ex-
day.
Exactly. Instead of chaos, waking up, shirt on, friggin' find some shoes and run out the door, with my pajamas on, still headed to work. So how has advocacy and speaking out helped you personally transform from surviving to thriving?
Well, until I was 35, I didn't dare talk about this at all. My doctor coached me to be silent. They scared me into it. People wouldn't understand. But after my toxicity, I started baby step talking about it. And I was met with kindness. And I was like, well, if this person can understand, what about this person? What about this person? And I think it's the hope that people get from it. Like, are there days where I'm like, I'm way too vocal? This is a bad idea. I want to scrub the internet. Absolutely. But then somebody I'll meet is like, "You gave me so much hope, and you reminded me that I do have a future, or there is an answer out there." And I'm like, "This is exactly why I do it." I'm an extremely transparent person today. I don't regret doing any of it. A lot of people who go into the professional world of social work are very hush hush about who they are, but
Yeah.
I'm not. And I think it's a powerful place to be, that you can be so open and transparent. And I do it so A, people can learn a little bit. But B, because if there's that one person who hears me and feels less alone, because I felt so lonely for so long, then it was worth everything.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt about it. And I have an ex-wife. I was married, girlfriends after. And there was times, even when I was with a partner, I had a partner, where I still felt I was alone. I have
Yeah.
I have the best aunt and uncle in the world that, they live upstairs. I have my two best cousins in the world who are always there for me, but still I felt like I was alone. I felt like I was alone. And
I
that's
was
why,
married and felt alone.
yeah. Yeah. And that's why I tell, I say it, 988. 988 was a, unbelievable resource and a tool for me, that if you have never heard of it, it's a great tool to have in the toolbox, because 24/7, 365, it's always operated and manned. So daily practices, what routines, tools, or mindset shifts keeps you grounded and positive now?
Every day when I wake up, I start the day with a positive intention. What good is going to be happening today? I keep a very strict routine in morning and night because that predictability is good for my mental health. Adequate sleep is probably number one for me. I'll trying to get that 8 hours. It's phenomenal what sleep can do for your brain and your body. Healthy eating and exercise is a big one. Drinking my water, meditation, one is yoga, and just trying to be a positive person is a big one. Music is very healing. Art is very healing. I enjoy DBT therapy. It's a very concrete style of therapy. I enjoy that. And I'm always open to learn more skills. For example, I always talk about this skill when I talk the 5 4 3 2 1 technique. So when you're feeling overwhelmed or anxious or just kind of revved up, name 5 things you can see out loud, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, et cetera, with all your senses. And it's a really great grounding technique that can kind of recenter you and bring you out of that heightened state.
So that's awesome. So you said 5 is what you can see, 4 is what you can touch, 3 is what you can hear. What's 2?
2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. It's just
Perfect.
and you can do it in any order, whatever you're around the most. It's just using just your 5 senses to
Senses, yeah.
disengage from what's up here.
Yeah, no, that's awesome because I say it all the time. I'm always looking for something new that I can try because some days, every day can be trying,
Yeah.
So for someone listening right now who's in a dark place, what's a message of hope you'd want them to hear?
I say all this not that I know your journey, but because I've been in a dark place myself. And I didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. I thought I was trapped in this darkness forever. I didn't know how to change my life. I didn't know how to turn things around. It seemed hopeless. But just listen to my story. Life is beautiful today. Life is something I could have never imagined in 2022 when I was writing that note. Life is something I never could imagine when I came home from the hospital. I created the life I wanted to have, and you can too. And there is that light at the end of the tunnel. So please hang on because you have a purpose, you have a reason, you're important, and you need to be here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And to piggyback off that, I think that's one of the biggest things is that, you belong here and you need to be here,
Yes.
because I think in the world today, there's a lot of mental health. And like you said, I don't think a lot of people, there's still so much stigma around it. Like you said, with, schizophrenia, I think everybody gets the whole myth of they're going to attack me, they're going to kill me from the movies, a TV show.
Yeah.
It,
Yes.
you watch Law and Order or one of those, and it's always a schizophrenic guy or girl who kills somebody, and then it's always in their heads. I had a young girl on who was suffering from, she was, what the heck was it? She had multiple personalities in multiple alters, and we were talking about it, and she was great. And that was our first time ever speaking in public, or to somebody besides her therapist about it. And we had a great talk. And it was just so interesting because she was probably one of the smartest person that I've ever talked to, and you would never think she was going through anything,
Yeah.
So you never know what someone's going through. So how do you handle setbacks or triggers, and what advice do you give others facing similar moments?
I think we're all going to be triggered at some point, and we're all going to have setbacks because we're human beings and that's life. I think for me, my number one trigger relates to my PTSD, thinking I'm in trouble, which triggers my OCD, which is a compulsive thought that I'm in trouble, which triggers my anxiety, which triggers my psychosis, having a delusion and paranoia. And it's about recognizing it early and nipping it and using those tools in my toolbox, like the 5 4 3 2 1. Because if I don't, it's going to last for weeks and I'm going to get carried away.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of this is having a lot of self-awareness about what's going on in my mind, body, and soul and remembering the skills. And there was a time in my life where I couldn't remember the skills. So I had a tangible toolbox. Every time I learned a skill, I put an item in there to represent that skill. So when I was in crisis, I could go pick it up and be like, oh, yeah. And then today, along my wall behind my desk, when I learned a new skill, I print it out and put it on the wall because it's like I need that reminder in the moment. And Yeah, I think I'll be triggered for the rest of my life from time to time, but it's just how do you get through it in the moment that matters.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things I think for me is when the trigger does come, if you're able to get through it. Like you said, sometimes you can be aware of it and know that it's coming. But I found in the past before I didn't know my triggers was once it started, it was a snowball. And like you said, it would last 2-3 weeks
Yeah.
because once you start going down the hill, there's no stopping you, you know?
Yep.
So family and friends supporting loved ones through mental health crisis right now, what's the best way they can show up?
Oh gosh. Educate yourself, communicate. Your loved one did not choose this, and I guarantee you there's enough negativity going on in their own mind without you being negative with them as well. This is not a fun ride all the time. So just be patient, be kind, be loving, love them when they can't love themselves, and be understanding, but be forgiving because this is a hard thing to master. And sometimes we may act in ways that are not always appropriate. I'm not condoning inappropriate behavior, but I'm saying just give that little bit of forgiveness and grace for those moments that may seem a little too unbearable for us.
That's so true. So, looking back, what's one thing you're most proud of in your journey so far?
Man, I think the thing I'm most proud of today is the fact that I never gave up. There's been a lot of points in my life where a lot of people would have just sat down and gave up, but I never did. I keep pushing and keep fighting. I'm extremely resilient, and I'm very proud of that.
What do you wish you could tell your younger self going through the hardest times?
What do I wish I could tell my younger self? Well, I think the best advice I could give my younger self would be don't sweat the small stuff. Don't compulsively worry and get triggered about things that in the grand scheme of things don't even matter. I have a bad habit of doing that. And I spent a lot of my youth beating myself up for things that didn't really matter. And I just wish I hadn't done that.
Perfect. So, where do you see J&E Support Group in your advocacy going in the future?
I would love our J&E support group to be a social work advocacy agency. We are registered as an advocacy agency, but I would love to see multiple peer supports working there, multiple social workers working in policy, working on program reform, working to be a large voice of change, especially in rural mental health care. That's my ultimate dream with J.
And I think that's one of the biggest things you said. Public policy. I think we need to get a lot of that changed, and a lot of the, you know, accessibility as well.
Yes.
So, last question. What's your vision for a world where mental health support is truly stigma free and accessible for everyone?
Oh my gosh. Well, what's my vision? It seems like the perfect world, right? But there's a
Yeah.
lot to get there. I mean, just insurance and finances is just the number one barrier to get
Yeah.
care. And then when you're talking stigma, that requires a lot of education. But I dream of a day where we can talk about our mental health like we do our physical health. Like, I have no problem calling my boss and saying, hey, I have a cold. I won't be there today. But why is it so unfathomable for me to call and say, hey, I'm having a bad mental health day? I need a day. Or, hey, I'm having this symptom. Like, why is it we're shaming people for something they cannot help? And I dream of a day where that shame for the way we were born is gone and people can just freely be who they are and not coached to be silent about it.
No, that's so true. Because, like you said, if you call in sick and say, "Hey, I got the flu today," no one's going to question it. But if you call and say, "Hey, I had a
Right.
trigger last night and I couldn't sleep and I'm manic today," and what are you talking about? You're fired. Like because
Exactly.
you're going to work, and so I think a lot of people like to, not like to, but hide it because of the stigma. And I tell people all the time, I talk about my issues up front. I don't sugarcoat it. Some days are better than others. My frustration doesn't lie with the people doing the work. My frustration is with like you said, insurance and finances is one of the biggest things, and accessibility. So I can't wait. I'm gonna come down in October. I'm gonna go on the website. I'm gonna
Yes.
donate. I'm gonna donate some stuff from Uncle Jimmy's podcast. Make a donation. So, Maddie,
Thanks.
thank you from the depths of our hearts for opening up with such raw honesty, grace, and light. Your journey from surviving unimaginable trauma and crisis to building a thriving life of purpose, helping others heal through J&E Support Group is nothing short of miraculous. You've shown us that even in our broken places, beauty and strength can bloom. That recovery isn't just possible, it's powerful. And that one person's story can spark hope in so many lives. To everyone tuning in, If you're struggling, know this. Maddie's light started in the darkest moments, and yours can too. Reach out, speak up, find your community. You're worthy of healing, joy, and a life full of possibility. Keep going. The world needs your unique spark. Maddie, you're a true inspiration. Keep shining bright. Listeners,
Thank
if this
you.
touched you, share it far and wide. Someone needs this hope today in Maddie's story. Until next time on Uncle Jimmy's podcast, stay kind to yourself, lift each other up, and remember, brighter days are always ahead. Thank you so much, Maddie.
Thank you.
And like I said, I can't wait to see you down in North Carolina in October.
Yes, it's so exciting.
I can't wait. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. So as I finish the podcast, my favorite saying, as I like to say, peace and love, Uncle Jimmy out.